This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
And good afternoon, 2:03 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion. Your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. I hope you had a great weekend. And I don't know. I'm going to ask in this first segment. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm quite honestly, I know a lot of you are boycotting the NFL and have done so throughout most of the regular season and through the playoffs and the Super Bowl and what have you. Of course, if you don't know, you'd have to be under a rock. The Eagles won against the Patriots, and a lot of people were happy about that. If I'm not mistaken, I think, is that not the Eagles' first Super Bowl win? It is.
Yes, it is.
It is, yeah. In any case, a lot of people were wanting Brady to go back to the big dance and win, but he didn't. But he's been there before. So, way to go, Eagles, I guess. The only people protesting were the liberals in the peripheral saying, Pink didn't protest enough. These people didn't protest enough. Actually, the share, the viewing audience was down, I think not quite 5%, but it was down nonetheless. If you watched the Super Bowl, I want to know. If you didn't watch the Super Bowl, what did you do on Super Bowl Sunday? I mean, what else is there to do on Super Bowl Sunday? 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. I'm pretty sure Black Lives Matter folks didn't watch the Super Bowl. Or they probably did. A lot of people say, well, no, I'm not going to watch, but they end up watching anyway. We'll find out about that in just a little bit. Also, the good cop story of the day, every day, because there seems to be this new narrative. They search the nation and try to find the most horrific law enforcement story they can, to make cops look bad. If they can do that, I can do this. Every day. Some cop someplace is doing something good for someone, but the media, of course, doesn't report that, taking the old adage, if it bleeds, it leads. Well, we're gonna change that a little bit. So every day we'll have a good cop story. If you want to send me one, just realize I have to vet it. I have to make sure it's true. Rick Roberts Show at WBAP.com. Rick Roberts with an S. Show, another S, two S's, Rick Roberts Show at WBAP.com. So I've got a good cop story for you. And yes, we're going to talk about Memo Gate here in just a little bit. But first, I got to tell you, if you frequent Outback Steakhouse, man, I suppose it's a decent place as chains go. If you're maybe a manager of Outback, would like, hopefully we in Texas are not as goofy as those people in Florida, but Outback asked a cop to leave, saying we're a gun-free restaurant. An Outback restaurant, I guess it was Tennessee, not Florida, is probably in a lot of trouble for kicking out a uniformed officer because he had a sidearm. It's in Australia. You know what Outback is, right? I don't need to go through that. It's an Australian-themed steakhouse. No worries, mate, and all that stuff. It's not actually connected to Australia at all, and as a chain, and that's somewhat relevant here. Restaurants across the country, right? But the one in Cleveland, Tennessee, is the only one making headlines today. The manager there told Andrew Ward, he's an officer with the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency, that he had to leave his firearm in the truck because the restaurant was a gun-free zone. I'll be honest with you. Maybe I shouldn't say this. If I walk up to a door at a restaurant or a place of business, it doesn't matter where it is, and I see that little circle with the the line through it and on front of the silhouette of a firearm, we're a gun-free zone. I don't go in because I figure these places are just waiting for somebody to come in and rob them or the people that are inside. It's sort of like you put a club on the steering wheel, you've got all kinds of flashing security lights in your car. A car thief walks up, he sees that, and then he looks over and sees a car with a window down and the keys in the ignition. He's a professional car thief. Which one do you think he's going to take? He's going to take the line of least resistance. So if I see, no firearm little sticker, you've seen them, I know you have, I just simply don't go in. I don't go there. But in any case, the manager there told Andrew Ward that he had to leave because it was a gun-free zone, and he had his sidearm on. Officer Ward told the manager, well, I'm required to remain armed while I'm in uniform. But the manager asked him to leave anyway. As a matter of fact, there was a Facebook post, well, we had a first tonight. While I was at work tonight in uniform, I stopped by Outback Steakhouse to eat dinner with my wife. I was approached by the manager and asked if I would put my gun in the truck. I told her that I couldn't because I was in uniform and I'm required to be armed. She then went and made a phone call, came back, and we were asked to leave the Outback Steakhouse because it's a gun-free zone. And he did make a note. I don't blame the manager, but this is ridiculous and we'll never go back. I don't blame him. What is this country coming to? A uniformed law enforcement officer who is sworn to protect and serve the public is refused service because he has a firearm. Outback contacted them and apologized for the incident, said there was another customer. Now, here's where it gets kind of sticky. There was another customer that was scared for her life. Listen to this. Scared for her life. She was seated just across from my wife and myself. The customer stated that she was afraid. She was afraid because police go around shooting people, and this customer went on to demand to be escorted to her vehicle out of fear of being shot. Okay, well, you can't blame Outback for that stupidity. I would have told the woman, go to your car yourself. Nuts. What's wrong with you? We need to turn our attention to people like this who try and push their agenda on all those around them. When an entire restaurant full of other happy people were completely fine with this officer's presence. And as a country, we need to stand up for each other. So many have shared this post online. That's a good thing. When the Miami Herald contacted the restaurant's corporate office, they were told the manager simply misunderstood their policy on firearms. What I'm more concerned with is the woman eating across from them. I'm afraid because police are going around shooting everyone. So will someone escort me to my car? Ironically, I think Australia has tried to make themselves a gun-free country. So to that officer, kudos. If you get to Dallas, give me a call. I'll buy you dinner. All right? All right, let's go to Jim in Garland. Jim, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Jim?
All right. How are you?
I'm good.
Listen, just one thing you said. Me and my son, we go to a special place every Saturday morning, and a lot of police officers hang out there. And if we leave before they do, me and him make a special effort to go up and shake their hands and thank them for their service.
Good for you. Good for you.
And it's just something. Anyway, yes, I watched the Super Bowl last night, and I was with one of my good friends, and we had about a dozen people there. And, the bad thing about it was Philadelphia won, but they did fulfill my wishes because they did burn down half the downtown last night, and I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, there were riots, weren't there?
Yeah, typical Philadelphia morons. But, they're, like I said a couple of weeks ago, they played Minnesota, and these people are throwing full beers at people. First of all, you don't throw beers at people, especially if they're full. You drink them, and then you throw them. People are dumb. I mean, just incredibly dumb.
Yeah, it was Black Lives Matter. The Philadelphia Super Bowl riots were a reaction to Trump being president. I mean, good Lord. How moronic do you have to be? I mean, it's just in the aftermath of the chaos that erupted in Philadelphia because the Eagles Eagles fans tore through the streets celebrating the Super Bowl. Many couldn't help but notice the difference in how the public and officials reacted to the riots by fans compared to those prompted by civil unrest. Somehow, it seems there's a line drawn in the sand where destruction of property because of a sports win is okay and acceptable in America. If you have people who are fighting for their most basic human right, the right to live, they will be condemned. Black Lives Matter was, they were all over this thing. I've never understood that. I've never, I think soccer fans are worse than anybody else, especially overseas. I mean, if it's not nailed down, it's being thrown. It's, Philadelphia City Council thanked emergency responders this morning for their hard work because of all the riots. This is the start of some long days and nights and all of that. Yeah, it was crazy. It was nuts. Let's go to Andrew in Fort Worth. Andrew, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Andrew?
Hey, Rick, I'm doing pretty good. How you doing, man?
I'm all right, thanks.
I did watch that Super Bowl, and I have been boycotting, but I decided to watch that Super Bowl this Sunday. I enjoyed it. Had a good time with my uncle. Had a little tenderloin on the barbecue. It was good. I watched it all the way to the end. Even watched the trophy being given to the head coach. And what I saw was, it was the worship of God. And it was great. The head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles was asked, well, how about it? And they handed him the trophy, and he said, I got to praise my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I was like, whoa. And I did a double take on that one. I was so glad to hear that.
And they didn't even carry him out of the stadium, right, for breaking the rules. I think the Super Bowl has brought to an end a season that has been just absolutely as controversial as you're going to find it, with Black Lives Matter and guys taking a knee and owners acting like idiots. And, hopefully next year we'll start, because I'm a football fanatic. I truly am. And I thought, man, I'm watching a football game for entertainment. I'm not watching it to take political cues from somebody. I'm not watching it to get some type of, agenda or narrative from a bunch of race baiters. I'm just not. So I'm looking forward to next year. I hope it changes. 2:15 the time. Let's check your afternoon drive. It was a mess out there and it's cold. We'll come back and take your calls. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. 2:21 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion on News Talk 820 WBAP. I don't know how many of you watch the Super Bowl. Of course, I'm waiting for next season. I truly am. If I'm hoping no knucklehead goes out there and starts taking a knee or, puts on a black glove and raises his fist or does something stupid. I mean, it's entertainment. That's what it's supposed to be. If I need to check myself politically or spiritually or any other way, I'll go someplace else, not a football game. Let's go to Mitch. Mitch, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Mitch?
Hey, doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Hey, we actually last night, it was like sit and watch the Super Bowl. Nah, we went to a new restaurant that opened up down the street. And normally to go in there, you've got about a 30-minute wait. There was nobody in there. There were two couples, us and one other couple. There were 5 people at the bar. And I looked at my wife and I go, and I reserved this restaurant just for you.
Just for you. Good job. Good job.
We got great service. The food came out right away. And then the only thing I wanted to see is every year I work with all the Medal of Honor recipients when they come out for Skyball, charity event that we do. And my job is to get young Marines and soldiers, airmen, sailors to be escorts for these outstanding gentlemen. And they spend about 4 or 5 days one-on-one with these heroes. And Woody and all those guys were out there for the coin toss. And it killed me. Here you've got a gentleman who received the Medal of Honor in World War II, and the guy can't even get his rank right. They called him corporal. He was a warrant officer, but it was funny. Woody did a great job on the coin toss, and I knew the commercials, the only thing I wanted to watch would be on YouTube the next day. So that's all that matters. Forget those guys.
You looking forward to next year?
You know what? Actually, taking the entire season off and not watching one single game, Rick, has been refreshing. I found that there's a lot of other things to do. So,
that's true. I mean, that is true. Look, I still love football as much as I ever did. But I'm not going to be played, by especially Black Lives Matter and these other groups. I mean, if they want to look, the owner's going to have to turn this thing around. They're the ones that, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, you got to forgive some of these players. They're way too young and way overpaid. The owners should have taken this in hand and done something about it, and it could have ended up differently.
Yeah, when we were in Iraq, we used to watch college ball, which was, so much more refreshing because the guys actually were working hard and trying. And then the professional, when the NFL came on, it was usually later on. Later games, so it was harder to watch those. I would prefer to watch college ball because the guys are still trying. They want to achieve that level of being in the pro, go with the pros, but they're trying harder, and you can tell it's a better game instead of I better not do that play because I may get hurt.
Yeah, Mitch, you're probably right. I know that I follow a couple colleges, and what?
Really, just a couple?
Well, yeah.
I think it's just one.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Well, what are you talking about?
Probably the University of Oklahoma.
Okay, well.
It's okay.
It's time for a break anyway. Okay. 2:25 the time. We'll step aside. What? Eric Bushman standing by in the WBAP newsroom. Very latest breaking news. And we'll check your afternoon drive as it begins to heat up. We'll come back and take more of your calls if you're on hold. You get your day in the court of public opinion. I'm Rick Roberts. News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 2:33 the time. Want to get to your calls. You've been patient. Just got this in via email. Rick, what was Black Lives Matter excuse before the Super Bowl win for the riots? ? I also believe now that Philadelphia is now one of the few cities that has a championship for every major team. Another email in. Hey, Rick, I'm a millennial myself. And my other millennial friends, we used to be diehard football fans, decided to have a junk food and game night instead of watching football. We had a blast. We have since found other things to fill our time after the anthem protest started. That's from Chris. And then finally, their first Super Bowl win. What's wrong with me? Just didn't want you to think I'm a moron. Laugh out loud. It was their first Super Bowl win, and now the NFC East is the only division to have all teams with Super Bowl wins. Well, there you go. All right, let's talk to Damon. Damon, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Damon?
Oh, hell, if I was any better, I'd be cleansed, but I can't afford that much medication.
What's going on? Let me guess. You didn't watch the Super Bowl.
Well, I ain't watched a ball game like that in 2 years. All it took was one time with that fellow that started that nonsense, and that's exactly what it was.
Oh, you're talking about Colin Kaepernick, right?
Yeah, and if they would have done the old Barney Fife technique and nipped it in the bud last year, we wouldn't have had none of this BS happening this year. We wouldn't have none of the headlines, and that's what should have happened.
Yeah, a lot of people, Damon, don't realize the Colin Kaepernick circus started when Obama was in office. It's been going on that long.
It's utter BS. And I said, if they're going to let him do that, they can go without my ratings. And people, you got to understand, I'm not talking to you, Rick, I'm sure you know, but how they set their revenue for their TV package is off of ratings. And when they have going to go over this season's ratings, which I've heard numbers up to 10%, those revenues are going to go down for their TV package.
I think last night I saw a figure earlier. Was it 3%? Is that what I saw? Super Bowl was down 3%. That doesn't necessarily sound like a lot, but when you're getting $1 zillion for a 30-second spot, it adds up. Damon, I appreciate the call very, very much. Let's go to Ed in Dallas. Ed, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Ed?
I'm supernal, and I couldn't be happier to be talking with you.
Well, good. Glad to have you.
Every time you ask me, I always say supernal. That means to be likened unto the sky or heavenly. For anyone that's out there wondering what that word means, it's the best word in the world. I worked last night doing a private event. I'm a server, and the people that I was with, they said, "Who do you think is going to win?" I said, "I don't know, but I think Philly is going to win. I'd like for them to win, but only by a molecule between my index finger and my thumb." But I also said, look at the riots that are going to happen afterwards. And I said, oh, that's not going to happen. And
it's Philadelphia, man. Of course it's going to happen.
Sure enough, it happened. Now, if I lived in Philly, I'd make sure that my automobile or any kind of private property that I had would not be on the street. It would be try to have it off the street. But again, look at the demographic of what caused the riots. You don't celebrate a victory with destroying things. You celebrate a victory with a parade.
Well, I think the parade's like a week or 10 days away.
Well,
it's a mob mentality, Ed. That's what it is. You see it after basketball games. You certainly see it after soccer wins, significant soccer wins. It's that mob mentality, and people lose their minds.
Well, you should behave yourself. I mean, I'm 50 years old. You know, I guess it's the youngsters getting out of control, but all those youngsters that get out of control that destroy property, we have a little remedy for that. It's called prison, not jail. Jail is local. Prison is state time. Okay, you spend some time in prison, and then you get a real dose of what it means to be a hoodlum there. Anyway, God bless you, and you have a great show. You have the best show between 2 and 5, and you're a blessing to our community.
Well, thank you. Those are kind words. I appreciate that. Social media exposed all these scenes, basically chaos. Tens of thousands of Philadelphia Eagle fans were going nuts. I say Philadelphia Eagle fans. Nobody knows that for sure. How many were, just simply bad actors using the win and, the celebration out on the street as an opportunity to loot. One police officer was among those reported injured. Cars and storefronts were damaged and looted. Despite these crowds after the game, police officials say the celebration were mostly peaceful. Those were probably the fans. Like I said, anytime something like this happens, it creates an occasion, an opportunity for bad actors to go in there and do what they would do if they could get away with it, which is, bust up things and loot. Only 3 people were arrested. That's amazing to me. According to a spokesman for the mayor. Tens of thousands came out and celebrated, but for a handful, the celebration, took a different turn. They looted stores. I think even Macy's got looted, if I'm not mistaken. I guess they're going to have a celebration parade this coming Wednesday. Almost 10,000 tuned into a public police radio. I guess somebody stole a couple police horses, but they found those. I don't know. When things like this happen, you don't want to be on the street. You don't want to have your wife or your girlfriend or something like that. You just don't want to do it. I mean, it's not a good situation. The Eagles stun the Patriots. That's what they were all, carrying signs. But these retail riots, you have to expect that. Because that's what these people do. It's sad. but looting and destruction was reported at convenience stores, like I said, Macy's department store, somebody stealing police horses. A man was posted online. He was in an Eagles jersey, kneeling on the ground and appearing. I can't even go into that. I can't even tell you what he was doing. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Zoo tweeted that despite rumors, they didn't have people in there wrestling animals like they have in the past. Good grief. It's a football game, for crying out loud. Let's go to Tim in Louisville. Tim, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Tim?
Hey, Rick. Good talking with you, sir.
You too.
I didn't watch any free games, nothing. I sat out in my garage. I did a little bit of cleaning, drank some beer. When the game came on, I went back to my back bedroom and I watched Scandalous last night. Are you familiar with that show?
Is that the one that's based on Clinton by any chance?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is very, very informative and very interesting. And I had no interest at all in watching any pre-festivities or even watching the game. My wife had her friend over. They watched. I went in the bedroom and I watched Scandalous because that is very cool.
Well, let me ask you, Tim, because I've got high hopes for next year's football season for the NFL. You know, the owners will get their greedy paws, out of this mess. The players will realize, oh, this is my job and this is my workplace. And whether I agree with it or not, every workplace has rules of conduct. I'm hoping I can go back and start watching football again.
I agree with you 100%. The only football that I really watched this year was ins and outs of the Cowboys, to be honest. And that wasn't sitting down in front of the TV watching the whole game. It was still just kind of in and out. So, and like the other caller said, I did get my garage cleaned up a whole lot more this year than any other year. But, I do agree with you. I hope that they can get their stuff together and start appreciating us, their payroll, and do the right thing and play ball.
Yeah, that's all we want. If you want to make a political statement or you want to do a formal protest or that's fine. Just do it someplace other than the field. That's your office. Just like I'm broadcasting from my office, which is a sound booth at Cumulus Media. I'm looking through the glass at the technical director Randy and producer David, and I look through another piece of glass and I'll see Eric Bushman when he comes in. This is my office, all right? And I'm accustomed to this type of office. I've had this type of office for 2 decades. There are certain things I can do and certain things I can't do. There are certain things I could start yelling and screaming and saying, and before I know it, Kevin Graham, the PD, is standing at the door going, hey, you okay? That's all I was trying to get across. Is let's play ball. If you want to protest, you want to be a part of Black Lives Matter or some other goofy group, just do it outside the office. That's all. All right, 2:44 the time. We'll step aside very quickly, check your afternoon drive. Then when we come back, the good cop story of the day. All right, 2:49 the time. Carol's been very, very patient. Carol, thank you for waiting. How you doing?
Well, thank you for taking my call. And Boomer Sooners.
Boomer Sooner. There you go.
You go. Class 71. I tell you what, I didn't watch it. I had a preacher and 2 missionaries in my living room, and they had a ball, and I served them non-alcoholic beverages and food and let them have their night together, and they had super time.
What cut it? Were you a football fan before? Well, you're former OU alum. You got to be.
Hey, I go back to Steve Owens and watching him run all over everybody, and then watching Jack Milburn and those boys come along, run
wow.
strong, and I love football. I really do.
Well, what cut it for you?
Last year, year before last, when this whole thing. I'm a vet. Okay, I took a couple of years off and you know had a good time in Southeast Asia, and then went back and finished school. And so I'm a patriot, and I see these coffins coming home with a flag over them, and I just can't tolerate anybody that disrespects it. Bottom line, when Kaepernick started this, I cut everything off except the Cowboys. And when Jerry Jones took a knee last year, I said, "That's it, Jack. We're out of here." And so I get my fix on Saturday watching OU typically, but anybody else is pretty good and enjoyable. And I even watch high school games on Saturday.
I tell you what, if you want to watch football played at its best, watch a high school game on Friday night. I mean, those guys, you know, I'm biased, of course, because my son played, but I mean, those guys, they leave everything on the field. They truly do. You know, my son played with Sam Bradford, but Bradford was always injury prone, and, you know, the same goes now in his pro career, but wish him nothing but the best. But, yeah, I would imagine Jerry Jones, if he could do it all over again, would probably do it differently. I would imagine a lot of owners would do it differently, and I hope they do, Carol. I hope that, you know, this new season, I hope it's totally different. You leave your politics in the locker room, just like, you know, I make a living out of talking about politics. But there are certain lines that you just simply don't cross. If you're an entertainment-based product like the NFL is, yeah, it's a showcase of athletic ability and all that kind of thing. Has nothing to do with politics, or it shouldn't. Has nothing to do with race, or it shouldn't. You know, if you want to start doing that, fine. Just do it off the field. That's all. I mean, I'd like to see the ratings go back up. I'd like to see the owners make money. And it's not like they're not making money now. They're just not making as much. You know, but put your people in check, you know, get it back under control. All right. Well, that's enough about the Super Bowl. You know, every day it seems the lamestream media, all the alphabet channels and news gathering stations, they all get together to try to find the worst cop story they can find. And cops are fallible. I mean, you know, they're human beings, but for the most part, they do a good job. And always have. You know, if you're Black Lives Matter or you're, you know, like that thing at Outback Restaurant, that's absurd. I need somebody to escort me to my car because there's a law enforcement officer in uniform and he's got a sidearm and everybody knows cops are going around shooting people. How stupid. I mean, you're a moron wrapped in an idiot if that's what you believe. You truly are. So we decided we'd do a good cop story every day because there's plenty of that going on. You just don't hear about it because the media doesn't report it. It's sort of like knowing what your president's doing. You don't know of anything going on with the president that works on our behalf because the lamestream media simply won't report it. You know, this memo gate, I am so sick and tired of hearing about this, but you know, this isn't political anymore. This is criminal. That's what this is. It's criminal. And we're going to talk about that in just a second, but I've got to give you the good cop story of the day. And, you know, it doesn't have to be necessarily rushing like it was last week to save someone from a burning vehicle when you didn't have to. It doesn't have to be anything bigger than just acknowledging a situation. So we're going to do that when we come back. All right. And I'll have the good cop story for you right after the top of the hour. We'll check the latest breaking news. We'll check your afternoon drive and the weather. Man, were you as surprised as I was? I got up this morning and it was like 29 degrees or something. It was ridiculous. Okay. We'll do all that. Come back, take your calls. Memo gate. Yeah, we got to talk about that. But please don't tell me it's all political. You know, political may be the genesis for this, but this is now a criminal thing. I mean, the first year of this new administration, we've done nothing new, but investigate the administration. All right, I'll get into that in a minute. 2:55 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 3:04 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion. Your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. All right, made an executive decision. I got tired of hearing, one bad cop story after the other. Yeah, cops they make mistakes. They're human beings like everybody else. But 99.9% of the time, they're doing the right thing. In trying, this whole thing that started with Ferguson, Missouri, then New York, and then Detroit, then L.A., and Black Lives Matter, and just like I told you, that idiot at the Outback restaurant in Tennessee, I need to be escorted to my car because there's an officer in uniform carrying a firearm, and everybody knows they go around shooting people. I don't know how do you deal with that? There is no way. I mean, you'd get more reaction and intelligence talking to a stump. So I decided, and I know this, people say, well, Rick, you're biased pro law enforcement. I probably am. I've got cousins and uncles, and my son-in-law is a K-9 officer. Yeah, so I probably am. That's because I see both sides. When my son-in-law gets up in the morning and kisses my daughter goodbye and pats the dog on the head, they have a dog other than his dog, but, he just wants to come home at the end of the shift, play with his kids, cook something outside. He's not out hunting people, to shoot. He's not out hunting black people to put the dog on. He's not doing any of that. And so I do take personally when the lamestream media drives the narrative that, look out, it's a cop, he's going to get you. Well, if you're a bad guy, he needs to get you. If you haven't done anything wrong, you don't have outstanding warrants, you get pulled over by a cop, put your hands on top of the wheel, yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, and you be on your way. If you want to live in anarchy, get rid of cops. I think you'd find out very, very quickly that's no way to live. So, every day we do a good cop story of the day. If you have one, you can send it to me, Rick Roberts Show, 2 S's, Rick Roberts with an S, show with an S, at WBAP.com. Rick Roberts Show at WBAP.com. And obviously I have to verify it, I have to vet it, and then we may use it. And, last week we talked about a cop that, he was looking for, a guy that was reportedly speeding. He's driving down the road, and this car passes him doing 100 miles an hour plus. He takes chase, couldn't keep up, and then he finds the guy off in the woods, car's on fire, breaks the sunroof, drags the guy out as the car's fully engulfed. Turns out it was, some dumb kid drinking. And, the cops do that kind of stuff every day. Do you hear about it on the news? No, you don't. And it doesn't have to be something as eventful as that. Sometimes it's just showing up. All right, let's do the good cop story of the day, shall we? All right. West Jordan, Utah. Sergeant Mike Nunnally, 27-year veteran of the West Jordan Police Department. He was just the right person for one little boy who needed some reassuring. Basically, the kid needed a hug on the side of the Redwood Road on Tuesday. 7-year-old Kason Stanley was riding in his mom's car when they saw a crash. Pretty horrific crash. They stopped in the median and waited for police to come along. When Nunnally arrived and walked up to Kason, the 7-year-old boy, and his mom, Kason was, he was losing it. He was clearly upset, trying to run from his mother, who was trying to hold him to keep him out of the busy road. Nunnally, the 27-year-old law enforcement veteran, walks up. Hey, you doing okay? The little boy shook his head. No, I'm scared. Then Kason ran from his mom, jumped into Nunnally's arms. He lifted him pretty high off the ground, gave him a big bear hug. He said, you doing okay? You doing all right? The boy was soon smiling and pointing to Nunnally's police car. Kason lives with his mom. They're struggling to make it. No father figure around. He takes my feelings and he intensifies them, according to his mom. But this particular day was different because Kaysen took on the demeanor of the officer that showed up on scene. And a lot of people were moved by it that witnessed it because, you know, he craves male attention as a little boy that doesn't have a dad around. A fellow officer gave Kaysen a new teddy bear. Cops carry them in the trunk, believe it or not. At the scene, Kaysen hugged it tight. He told Fox 13 there locally about the big cop who gave him a hug. And sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes, you know, you don't have to rescue someone from a burning car or stop a bank robbery. Sometimes all you need to do is show up. And cops do this every single day. Every day. So the next time you want to badmouth a cop, you know, think about it for a second. You know, maybe you had a bad situation or a bad run-in. Who knows? But at the end of the day, they want to go home to their families too. And sometimes the only thing between you and the bad guy that wants to come take your stuff or your life is a police officer, sheriff's deputy, first responder of some kind. So think about that the next time you start dogging cops. All right? Just saying. Well, Rick, you're biased. I don't have to listen to you. No, you don't. It's your prerogative to listen or not. But I'm telling you, I've seen it from both sides. Even going back to my grandfather that raised me as a high sheriff for Sedgwick County, I've seen both sides. They're not perfect, but 99.9 times out of 100, they're going to make the right call, and it's going to be in your favor. All right, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. There's your good cop story of the day. And when we come back, it's Memo-gate. Are you as sick and tired of emails, memos, special counsels, investigations? I mean, if half the government, just half, would spend time trying to improve this country and all that live within her borders, we'd be so much better off. But no, we can't do that. The enemy of the state, which are the Democrats in Washington, D.C. I'm not talking about you. If you're listening to me and you support everything the Democrats are doing in Washington, yeah, you're an enemy of the state too. Rick, you can't call people enemy. Well, I just did. I called them enemies of the state. You know, if you want to turn this into a social, take us away from capitalism and embrace socialism, let me clue you. Socialism is simply the rest stop on the highway to communism. So anybody out there, well, socialism's the way to go. Yeah, until you run out of somebody else's money. All right, Memo-gate when we come back. 12 minutes after the hour, I'm Rick Roberts. News Talk 820 WBAP.
WBAP.
Does.
All right, 16 minutes after the hour. Are you as tired of Memo-gate as I am? I'm tired of Memo-gate. I'm tired of Democrats pretending to be enemies of the state. I'm tired of investigating investigators. I'm tired of special counsels. I'm tired of emails and servers in people's bathrooms. I mean, at some point, you just say, stop.
Well, Harris, we now know the facts of what happened. The Democratic Party hired the Perkins Law Firm. The Perkins Law Firm hired Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS hired Christopher Steele to go and dig up the dossier. And then they hired Nellie Orr, the wife of Bruce Orr, to get the fake dossier from a political environment into the bloodstream of the intelligence community and to convert it into an intelligence document. And what's most outrageous to me is that this fake dossier was so unreliable that the way that it was validated to the FISA court was a Yahoo News article written by Michael Isikoff, planted by Christopher Steele. So Christopher Steele wrote the fake dossier, and then he went and planted fake news stories to validate the dossier. The FBI was going to pay Christopher Steele. They had authorized payment, but then when they found out he was talking to the media and that he was unreliable, they canceled payment to him. But even after canceling payment to Christopher Steele, the FBI and the Department of Justice reauthorized the FISA warrant to spy on American citizens based on a political document that had its origins at the Democratic National Committee.
All right. So bottom line, it doesn't matter where you go in MemoGate. I mean, A goes to C, C goes to G, it doesn't matter. It all goes back to the same place. The Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign. Now, some people took exception to my statement on Friday that the Democrats in the nation's capital, I'm not necessarily talking about your neighbor or the guy across the street, and we all have to live with this mess, but I'm talking about the Democrats in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., are enemies of the state. Have they done anything in the last year to make your life better? No. You know, I was sitting here, I've got a list over here, 176 things that Donald Trump has done successfully that helps this nation, that help the people that live within our borders. Do you know about any of them? Maybe one or two. The lamestream media won't report them. So how can a guy be so successful and so disliked at the same time? Because you've got the enemies of the state, the Democrats in D.C., working hand in glove with the media. That's how. I'm sorry. I'm sick of being played like a cheap pawn shop guitar. Let's go to Jeff in Grand Prairie. Jeff, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm fine. A great honor to talk to you, Rick.
Thank you.
I'm tired of all this stuff. I mean, it's like half the time when I was watching the State of the Union address, and every time it went back to when he was talking about veterans and this and that, and they were standing on their heads, sitting in their hands, and he was talking about his accomplishments and stuff like that. And I mean, I'm just tired of it. Going back to your original MemoGate, I'm tired of listening about why hasn't Hillary, she broke the law, why isn't she being prosecuted for her shenanigans? For her email server violating federal law. And I mean, how many times I have a story that I've gotten to a place where an African American gets tried for treason, one count of releasing he released secure information when he signed the non-disclosure agreement with the government, and he's serving 15 years in prison, and she's done a whole hell of a lot more. Why isn't her, pardon my English, why isn't her backside serving some time in a federal prison? And it really is just getting out of hand, and I'm tired of it.
Oh, it is out of hand, Jeff. You know, I said for time immemorial, all right, look, it's Hillary Clinton. She's the Teflon mom. I don't know if she knows Gotti or not, but, she's the female incarnation of John Gotti. I mean, nothing sticks to this woman. Nothing. If you and I did 1/10 of what Hillary Clinton has admitted to doing, we'd be under the jail. So I used to say, look, let it go. Let's move forward and, just move on and, just move on because nothing's going to stick to it. I don't feel that way anymore. As I said on Friday, I don't feel that way anymore. I'm sick and tired of one of the two major political parties trying to turn us into Venezuela. I don't want to be Venezuela. I don't want socialism. I don't want dictators. I don't want my government to believe they are better suited to tell me where to live, where to work, where to educate my kids, what to eat. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. It's time to start holding people accountable. You do that with term limits. You do that with campaign finance reform. The Democrats and the media spent an entire week lying to the American people about the memo. We've all heard it. If you look at Front Page Mag, the memo was supposedly full of classified information, and releasing it, oh my God, we can't do that. It would expose our spying methods. By our, they didn't mean American spying methods. They meant Obama's spying methods. The former White House ethics attorney claimed that the Nunez memo would undermine national security. Remember that? I mean, left and right, MSNBC, CNN, headline news. If we do this, if the Republicans acting in such a reckless manner do this, it will undermine our national security. How many times did you hear that? On MSNBC, Senator Van Hollen threatened that if the memo was released, the FBI and Department of Justice will refuse to share information with the House Senate Intelligence Committee. You can't make that threat. That's not your call. All these people are acting independent. Well, if you do this, I'm going to do it. Well, you don't have a choice. You can't make that threat. Senator Cory Booker, screaming like a stuck pig that releasing the memo was treasonous. It might be revealing sources and methods, even endangering fellow Americans in the intelligence community. Do you see what a crock this is? I gave you the memo on Friday. The memo isn't treasonous. What it does is reveal a treasonous effort by the Democrats to use our intelligence agencies to rig an election. That's what it shows you. No, the memo isn't treasonous at all, but it does reveal treason, an effort by the Democrats to use, manipulate, choreograph intelligence agencies to rig an election and overturn the will of the voters. That's what it does do. The only two sources are Christopher Steele, who was funded by the Clinton campaign, and a Yahoo News article. If you're the intelligence arm of the American government, do you go off Yahoo? My God, that's like Men in Black reading the National Enquirer to figure out what the news story of the day is. They went to a Yahoo News article and used it to obtain a FISA warrant against a Trump associate. And not a big deal associate either. This guy was nothing. If I was the judge, which we're never going to know who it was, if I was the judge, man, I would just be boiling. I would be gunning, figuratively speaking, for every one of those FBI folks that came to me, well, we need a FISA warrant, the American security's in jeopardy, the sovereignty of America hangs in the balance. No, it doesn't. You were just trying to rig the election against Trump and for Hillary. All right, 3:33 the time. I'm trying to give you the foundation of MemoGate here, the Yahoo story that they used to substantiate a FISA warrant, along with a couple other things, came from Michael Isikoff, the reporter who knew about Bill Clinton's affair with Monica Lewinsky, but he suppressed it. It was based on more leaks from Steele, which the FBI and the Department of Justice, they just ignored that. Steele's identity was already well known. The only news source revealed, yes, Judge, we need a warrant to tap the phones of this guy because of a Yahoo News story. No vital intelligence sources were compromised at Yahoo News. No Yahoo News agents were killed. All right? There weren't black helicopters hovering just above cloud cover spying on every move. The media spent an entire week lying to Americans about the dangers of the memo because it didn't want you to find out what was inside. Well, the media and the Democrats, they switched from claiming that the memo was full of classified information that might get CIA agents killed to insisting, oh, there's nothing there. Doesn't matter. It's a nothing burger, right? Oh, man. This is what happens when you're trying to put forth a lie and then someone calls your bluff and then you go, oh, okay, well, I was just kidding. There's really nothing there. On Thursday, the narrative was that the memo would devastate our national security. No one should ever be allowed to read it. And by 24 hours later on Friday, the new narrative was that the memo doesn't tell us anything important. We shouldn't even bother reading it. The lies change, but suppressing the memo was the goal. Representative Nadler, infamous for securing pardons for weather underground bombers. Remember those guys? got caught between the narratives when he insisted that the memo was, it's just overhyped. That's what it was. It was just overhyped. That's all there was. Endangers national security. I don't think anybody will be terribly shocked by what's in the memo. We went from, this is devastating, Americans will be shocked, to, nobody's going to be shocked. Requested an emergency meeting of the House Judiciary, a body he's going to head if Democrats win the midterms, by the way. Calling emergency meetings is not the response to an overhyped, non-shocking memo. There's no legitimately classified information in the Nunes memo, but it does endanger a number of Americans in the intelligence community who colluded with the Clinton campaign against you, against America. It endangers former FBI Director Comey, former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, current Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, and the current FBI General Counsel Dana Boente, who had previously served as the acting Attorney General. These men and women have allegedly signed FISA applications that were at the very best misleading, and at the worst, they were committing fraud. The Clinton campaign had enlisted figures in the FBI and the DOJ to manipulate an election. Do you see that? Do you understand that? The coup against America operated as a state within a state, inside the U.S. government. I know that's confusing, but it was a coup, that's what it was, against America, operated as a state within a state inside the United States government. And again, Frontline Mag points us out, if you don't get a chance, go to Front Page Magazine, read the article. The political genesis for the Steele dossier, they were known to senior DOJ and FBI officials. The memo told us that. But they did not reveal on the FISA application. In other words, you got to make a FISA application, put it before a judge before he's going to give you a warrant to spy on Americans, right? They didn't reveal on the application that their core evidence came from the Clinton campaign. Sources were certainly being protected, but they were Clinton sources. The memo also reveals that without the Steele dossier, you know what I'm talking about, right? This British spy, well, he got hookers up there and they urinated on the bed. No, it was a big deal. The memo reveals that without the dossier, which nobody confirmed, nobody believed, there would have been no eavesdropping on Carter Page. The associate targeted in this particular case, and why Carter Page is beyond me. Deputy Director McCabe, he testified before the committee in December of 2017 that no surveillance warrant would have been sought from the FISC, neglected to mention that his primary source had been paid by the Clinton campaign. It was unverified and would continue to be unverified. Well, if you're Comey, you got to be a little worried here. He testified that he told President Trump that the dossier was unverified. Yet the unverified piece of opposition research was used as the basis for the FISA application. You see what's going on? Okay. All right. Let me tell you, I'm sick of it. I don't trust any of them. Any of them. And you probably shouldn't either. Let's go to Tony. Tony, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing good, Rick. How are you, sir?
I'm all right, thanks.
It's good talking to you again. I hope you're doing well.
Thank you very much. You too.
The one thing I would like to know, and Sean, I listen to Fox News, and I've not heard Sean Hannity or Tucker or anybody call this for exactly what it was. And this was a plot to overthrow the government, was it not?
Yes, it was to overthrow certain factions of the government. But you're right in saying to overthrow the government as far as the practice and laws that we run this government by. This was meant to manipulate it, to overthrow it. Would be correct.
It was a plot to overthrow the government, and call me stupid if you want, but I remember when I was a kid, a plot to overthrow the government that was punishable by death, was it not?
Well, a coup that rises to the level of treason, you're right. But, anytime Clinton's name comes up in any of this, everyone runs the other way.
But what I can't understand is why nobody's calling it exactly what it is. And it was a plot to overthrow the government, as far as I'm concerned. And I've never heard anybody say anything else about it.
Well, that's exactly what it was. I said on Friday, the Democrats in Washington, I'm not talking about your neighbor or your coworkers or whatever, but the Democrats in Washington are enemies of the state for that very reason.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it gives me no pleasure in saying that. People are going to say, well, you're just one of those right-wing talk show hosts, Republicans. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent. I'm a conservative.
Yes,
but
yes, sir. I know you're not, but I am a Republican, and I'm also a conservative, and half the time I wonder why I'm still a Republican, because the way they've treated Donald Trump too.
Well, yeah, the never Trumpers, they're going to pay dearly for this. I don't know if it's the midterms or later, but, I'm sorry, there's no evidence whatsoever, Tony, of any corruption or corrupt evidence to obtain warrants against the people in the Trump campaign. None.
Right.
And that's why they tried to block the release of the evidence, because they knew as soon as the memo came out, everyone would see, wait a minute, you got a warrant to spy on an American based on a Yahoo News article and a dossier that the Clinton campaign paid for from a British spy that's been totally unverified?
Exactly, and now the Democrats are wanting to come out with their own memo, which is going to be exactly the opposite of the memo that's already come out, and you know that, and I know that, and I'm hoping the American people know this.
Yeah, I do too. Maybe we can give I don't know, a national platform to Nancy Pelosi for 30 uninterrupted minutes, and we can all just kind of kick back and listen to that, because that's what the memo is going to be.
Well, I agree with you, sir, and it's a pleasure talking to you. I'll get off and listen, but a plot to overthrow the government is not going to. You're never going to sway me that that's not what this was.
No,
Clinton and her cronies were plotting to overthrow the government, and the FBI and all of them should be charged with that.
Well, if I were a betting man, I would say there will be certain people in the DOJ and the FBI that all have charges brought against them. I wouldn't be surprised if this judge's name was leaked. Whoever this judge was had to be half asleep at 3:00 in the morning when they came to the front door. It's nuts.
Can I ask you something, Rick? One more thing. I mean, is there any punishment for lying to the FISA judge? I mean, is there anything on the books at all?
Yeah, it's fraud. It's fraud. It's got to be fraud. Pure and simple. You don't go to a FISA judge and say, hey, we've got this, this, and this. Evidently, he wasn't given the full story. I want to see the application. That's what I want to see.
Well, that's what I'd like to see, too.
I mean, because then you're going to know. I mean, all this talk about he said, she said, no. Give me the application that was used initially, and we'll know exactly who needs to go to jail.
Well, they all need to go to jail as far as I'm concerned, and I wish you a good day, sir, and I hope you do well.
Tony, thank you very much for the kind words. 3:44 the time. Your calls in the court of public opinion coming up. Memo Gate. Just can't get enough of it, right? All right, 3:49 the time. Almost 10 minutes before the hour. Let's go to Shelley. I'm not sure where Shelley is calling from. Hi, Shelley.
Hi. I'm just I just started listening a few few minutes ago, and I heard your last couple of segments. I don't understand why you're not giving the full story to your listeners, other than it doesn't fit your narrative.
Why don't you give it to me, Shelley?
Well, the initial FISA application, or the warrant, was issued 30 days before the dossier. Carter Page was an admitted Kremlin informant.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was.
No, he was not. He's a second. I'm an informant.
No, you're uninformed.
Oh, I am uninformed. Well, tell me what the corrupt evidence to obtain the warrant was. What was that exactly?
Carter Page was being surveilled by the FBI since 2013.
What does that have to do with a FISA warrant?
Okay, let me give you a scenario.
No, I don't want a scenario. I got plenty of those. Tell me what corrupt evidence was used to obtain the FISA warrant.
No one has seen that application.
Correct. So how can you make the assumption that it was done properly?
How can you make the assumption it wasn't?
Well, the evidence was unverified opposition research. Its source had been paid for by the Clinton campaign.
And that sourcing was released to the FISA court. You need to read his letter that he issued in 2014 and 2013.
Okay, listen, Shelley, not only had Steele been indirectly working for the Clinton campaign when he wasn't being paid by the FBI, but he made no secret of his own political agenda to stop Trump. In September 2016, Steele admitted to Orr his feelings against then-candidate Trump when Steele said he was desperate that Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being president, period. That was in the memo. Shelley, you're a contrarian. You've called here before. I tell you what you do. You give me the corrupt evidence that was used to obtain the FISA warrant, and I'll listen to you. Former Associate Deputy Attorney General, General Bruce Orr, whose wife was being paid by an organization hired by Clinton, the Clinton campaign, to investigate Trump, then passed along his wife's opposition research to the FBI. As far as Carter Page, this guy was about as low level as you are. The evidence couldn't be any more corrupt than that, Shelley. Steele was passionate about Trump not being president, so were his handlers who ignored his leaks to the media until he was suspended and then terminated as an FBI source for what the FBI defined as the most serious of violations, an unauthorized disclosure to the media. I don't know why. They're working hand in glove with him. And of his relationship with the FBI. His previous meetings included the one that allegedly generated the Yahoo News article. Now, Shelley, if you want to take your political cues from Yahoo News, you can be my guest. Most of us in this country do not. Tainted investigations are nothing new, Shelley. I'll give you that. Law enforcement is as fallible as any other profession, but the memo details a snapshot of just how many top figures colluded. I mean, forget the Russian collusion. Look at this. How many people colluded in this corrupt and tainted effort to keep Trump out of the Oval Office? Now, unless you know something that Americans don't know and the media doesn't know, please let me know. If you've got documentation that proves otherwise, hey, I'm open to it. You don't have it. What drove them to violate their professional, their ethical, the norms in Washington and legal requirements in the FISA application? It wasn't Carter Page. This guy was nothing in the Trump campaign. Top DOJ and FBI officials shared Steele's passion. They didn't want Trump either. And by the way, the ultimate employer, Hillary Clinton, tried to stop Donald Trump at all costs, including using the DOJ and the FBI collusion. Shelley, remember that? That's what your boys have been trying to prove up for better than a year with Russia. It's not there. There's no evidence. The only thing that we know is that the Russians and the Clinton Foundation were pretty friendly. That's all we know. I'm sorry. Just like Nancy Pelosi, saying it ain't so over and over again doesn't necessarily provide evidence to the contrary. Open your eyes, Shelley.
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
I support releasing the Democrat memo with appropriate redaction to protect sources and methods, and the affidavit undergirding the FISA warrant, and I support getting to the bottom of the federal government being weaponized against the very citizens it was elected and appointed to serve.
Yeah, how about that? That sounds good. How about we look at the application, the initial and by the way, there were at least 2 or 3, I think 3, renewals. You have to renew your application. I think it's 369 every 90 days, if I'm not mistaken. But Shelley, she's got a handle on this. She knows what's going on. Tainted investigations, like I said, are nothing new. What drove them to violate their professional and ethical norms on this and the legal requirements, that's the big thing in the FISA applications. Well, Shelley, the Department of Justice and FBI officials shared Steele's passion and that of his ultimate employer, Hillary Clinton, to stop Trump at all costs. And they're still trying to use this Mueller investigation to overturn the election results in a government coup that makes Watergate look like a tea party. Personally, I want an accounting of all the time, money, and resources the taxpayers were out on this Mueller investigation. Former Deputy Director McCabe, he's already under investigation. He's suspected of trying to sit in on the Wiener emails until the election was over. That alleged failed cover-up triggered the Comey letter, which hurt Hillary worse than the revelation would have to begin with. McCabe's wife had financial links to the Clintons. Former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, she was an Obama holdover who had foolishly tried to use the DOJ to go to war with President Trump. Both Yates and Benente were Obama and Holder choices during the groundless prosecution of the Republican governor of Virginia. Buente said, no one is above the law, except Democrats. We'll see if that's true with everyone who signed the FISA application. Let's see if no one is above the law once we see who signed off on the FISA application. Sorry, Shelley, you're laboring under a sad misconception, and you are a cancer on this country. I'm just saying. Let's go to Hank. Hank, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Hank?
Hey, great, Rick. Thanks for letting me talk to you.
You bet.
Yeah, I think Shelley is, somewhat straight, and I think she's straight from the point of view that your major supposition is that the Golden Showers dossier was the principal reason that a FISA warrant was granted. And, I would refer you to Trey Gowdy that kind of put that to rest from the standpoint of saying that it was a component of it. And, oh, by the way, there's nothing that a FISA or a judge would do that would even take into account the deal about the Yahoo article and Steele. There must have been, and I think this goes to the point of there's a lot more that goes into getting a FISA warrant. I think if we went through 3 judges on maybe even 4 from the standpoint that the first request was denied. And at that point, they could have gone to the review board, which consists of 3 judges who we know, but they didn't do that. They came back again, and it was renewed 3 times. So my point is that, the supposition that the Golden Showers deal from Steele was the principal means of a court judge granting that, I think that's felonious.
I never said it was the sole and only thing that was the tainted evidence or unverifiable evidence. It's unverifiable.
That's why I understand that we're coming on, and we're focusing on that from the standpoint that the problem is that there were bad decisions made by folks in the FBI, and they were partisan. And
of course, there were two sources. I mean, the memo isn't treasonous, but it does reveal a treasonous effort by the Democrats to use the DOJ and the FBI. Only two sources. Christopher Steele.
I think that they were tainted by that component, and using that component to maybe verify some other items that were in the original FISA warrant, and maybe the original FISA warrant used, or request for it used, information that was surely not of a level of confidence that could be used in such a secret court.
Well, here's the thing. Two sources are Christopher Steele, who was funded by the Clinton campaign, and a Yahoo News article. When I heard Yahoo, my ears went up because I thought, wait a minute, what? Those were used to obtain a FISA warrant against a Trump associate. Pure and simple. Two sources. Christopher Steele, who was funded by the Clinton campaign, and a Yahoo News article that was used to obtain the FISA warrant against the Trump associate. And this guy was so low level, it wasn't even funny. That Yahoo story came from Michael Isikoff, the reporter that, knew all about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, but chose to set on it. It was based on more leaks from Steele, which the FBI and the DOJ chose to ignore. Steele's identity was already known. The only news source revealed is Yahoo News. No vital intelligence sources were compromised at Yahoo News. As far as I know, no Yahoo News agents were killed or disappeared under mysterious circumstances. So, like I said, I want to see the FISA application. Love to know who the FISA judge was. No legitimately classified information in the Nunez memo. It does endanger a number of Americans in the intelligence community who colluded with the Clinton campaign against the entire country. I mean, I told you who they were. FBI Director Comey, Deputy Attorney Sally Yates, former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Those folks ought to be lawyering up right now. Current Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and the current FBI General Counsel Dana Boente. Here's the bottom line. The Clinton campaign had enlisted figures in the FBI and the DOJ to manipulate an election. That's what you can take from this. James Bond's not in there someplace, although I kind of think some of these people thought they were James Bond. The coup against America operated as a state within a state. The political origins of the Steele dossier, they were known to DOJ and FBI officials. When it finally came out, the memo reveals that without the Steele dossier, there would have been no eavesdropping on Carter Page. After, the second or third renewal process? The Trump associate targeted in this particular case. Carter Page was a nobody, except in his own mind. Oh, yeah, I'm a liaison with Putin. I don't even know that he ever met Putin. Deputy Director McCabe testified before the committee in 2017 that no surveillance warrant would have been brought from the FISC without the Steele dossier information, which came, I don't know what renewal it was, it doesn't matter. But the FISA application neglected to mention that its primary source had been paid by the Clinton campaign. It was unverified and continues to be unverified. So FBI Director Comey testified that he had told President Trump that the dossier was unverified, yet the unverified piece of opposition research was used as a basis for a FISA application renewal. That doesn't make much sense, does it? Okay, well, Shelley evidently has some internal memos from the DOJ and the FBI, and I'd love to get my hands on them, Shelley. I really would. 4:13 the time. Let's check your afternoon drive.
Well, Harris, we now know the facts of what happened. The Democratic Party hired the Perkins Law Firm. The Perkins Law Firm hired Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS hired Christopher Steele to go and dig up the dossier. And then they hired Nellie Orr, the wife of Bruce Orr, to get the fake dossier from a political environment into the bloodstream of the intelligence community and to convert it into an intelligence document. And what's most outrageous to me is that this fake dossier was so unreliable that the way that it was validated to the FISA court was a Yahoo News article written by Michael Isikoff, planted by Christopher Steele. So Christopher Steele wrote the fake dossier, and then he went and planted fake news stories to validate the dossier. The FBI was going to pay Christopher Steele. They had authorized payment, but then when they found out he was talking to the media and that he was unreliable, they canceled payment to him. But even after canceling payment to Christopher Steele, the FBI and the Department of Justice reauthorized the FISA warrant to spy on American citizens based on a political document that had its origins at the Democratic National Committee.
Yeah, well, gee whiz. If I'm a Democrat, I don't want to hear that. If I'm an enemy of the state, I don't want to hear that. Oh, man. Let's go to Marie. Marie and Euless. Marie, thank you for waiting. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick, for taking my call. I'll try to make it quick as I usually do, but I want to address the caller, and I'll say it real concise, that just called a minute ago. As far as what conservatives think, I think I can speak for myself and others that it wasn't just the FISA warrant. It was all the unethical moving parts along with that warrant that we understand. So it wasn't just the FISA warrant. So they need to understand it. That's what we're upset about, all the other moving parts, too, with it to get to that warrant. But then on addressing Shelley on my second thing here, I know you're a lawyer and you deserve respect because you've built up your expertise. And the fact is that when I went to graduate school a while back, I went to school with people like her. And it's just, you could tell she's a liberal. They create monsters by giving them education instead of using it as a foundation to build on when you go out in the world. But they think they know everything, and they got rid of a lot of good teachers because they wouldn't cave in, give them grades and stuff when they complained and stuff. And Shelley is exactly like one of those people that went and had their parents complain or take money from the school and got rid of that teacher the next year. But I could just, like I said, this is just a liberal that has lack of respect for people and peers and anyone. They just live in a narcissistic world, and it's all about them, and very smug. My third point is, and it's a question, is that I would like to know how come Shelley isn't at the center of this investigation? Why don't the Democrats have her testifying, and why aren't the Republicans seeking out to get her too? It would be a win-win on both sides because she seems to be privy to information. She seems to be very smug and very confident that she knows more than you do. And the only thing I can think of is the reason why she hasn't came out is she's illegal. She is hiding in the shadows and doesn't want to reveal that she's illegal. So I don't know if you can answer that question of why or how come they haven't had her at the center of the investigation.
Well, I'm sure it'll come out at it'll come out at some point, Marie. Shelley has called the station before, and yeah, she's a liberal, and she talks like 90 miles an hour, but most liberals do because they don't want to be interrupted and faced with a fact, and they cherry pick something. And, your first comment was correct. All the moving parts in this, that's how Clinton has been able to stay out of jail. There's so many moving parts, it's hard to nail anything down. And that's why she's Hillary Clinton. That's why Bill Clinton, I just love Shelley. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I'll tell you why it's amazing. The former Associate Deputy Attorney General, Bruce Orr, which I'm sure has had lunch at Shelley's house many times, whose wife was being paid by an organization hired by the Clinton campaign to investigate Trump, or then passed along his, we're talking about moving parts, or then passed on his wife's opposition research to the FBI. The evidence couldn't be any more corrupt than that. Why would he do that? She was hired by the Clinton campaign to do opposition research on Trump. That's fine. There's nothing against the law with that. I mean, it's done all the time by Republicans too. But then you pass it along to the FBI? Steele was passionate about Trump not being president, and so were his handlers. And like I said, tainted investigations, they're nothing new. Law enforcement is as fallible as any other profession, but the memo reveals a snapshot of just how many people colluded in this corrupt and tainted effort. But Shelley evidently has some documents that will shed a different light on that. I'm looking forward to those documents in the mail any day now. What drove him to do this? Top DOJ and FBI officials, they shared Steele's passion, and that of the ultimate employer, Hillary Clinton, to stop Trump at all cost. The former deputy director, McCabe, is already under investigation. If this guy doesn't have an attorney on retainer, somebody needs to call him and wake him up. He's suspected of trying to sit on the Wiener emails until the election was over with. That was failed. That cover-up was failed. It triggered the Comey letter, which hurt Hillary worse than if it had come out to begin with. So the former acting attorney general, Sally Yates, was an Obama holdover. She stupidly tried to use the DOJ to go to war with Trump. The memo is it's only the first crack in the wall. Do you realize that? It's the first crack in the wall, but it is grounds for an investigation that will expose the abuses that led to eavesdropping on Trump officials and the motives of those who perpetuated them. So this thing is far from over. And, if you've got any of you have documentation to the contrary, you ought to cough it up right away. A Washington Post piece suggested that just releasing the memo alone would allow Mueller to charge President Trump with obstruction of justice. That's nonsense. That's how badly they want to get Trump. A clear and simple fact emerges from the memo, and I'll give it to you. Top figures in the DOJ and the FBI, some loyal to Obama and some loyal to Hillary and some to both, they abused the FISA process in the hopes of influencing or reversing the results of an election by targeting their political opponents. The tool they used for the job came from the Clinton campaign. Using America's intelligence services to destroy and defeat a political opponent running for president is the worst possible abuse of power. And it's unprecedented as a threat to a democratic system of free and open elections. So you want to talk about the Russia collusion? Hell no, let's talk about the American collusion, where one party uses the DOJ, the FBI, and intelligence sources to manipulate and rig the election. We've been given lectures continually about the independence of the DOJ and the FBI, but our country isn't based around government institutions that are independent of oversight by elected officials. When unelected officials have more power than elected officials, that's called tyranny. All right, 4:33 the time. Let me just say this to close my monologue, and I'll go right to your calls. A Justice Department that acts as the Praetorian Guard for a political campaign, any political campaign, is committing a coup. That's what it is, pure and simple. And yeah, you can say, as one of my previous callers did, that rise to the level of treason. The complex way that the Steele dossier was laundered from the Clinton campaign to a FISA application is evidence of a conspiracy by both the Department of Justice and the Clinton campaign. I don't know any other way to say it. Well, Rick, if you were a good liberal, you'd hone in on one detail and build your case around that. Well, I'm not. You have to look at the whole picture. It's time for all of us to learn about all the FISA abuses. The list of NSA unmasking requests. Remember those? When the NSA wanted to unmask Trump officials. By whom? By Obama. And the eavesdropping on members of Congress. We deserve to know the truth. The memo's been released. Now it's time to release everything, including the Democrats' response. I mean, nothing they say would surprise me. Listen to Nancy Pelosi, for God's sake. I mean, all right, let me get to your calls. Casey in Dallas. Casey, thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing, Casey?
Great, Rick. Thanks for taking my call. I'm loaded for bear. I've got so many points. I just hope I can remember most of them. First, I'd like to say I'm glad I don't own any stock in the Perkins Law Firm. And you were saying that McCabe ought to be lawyering up, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't need to, Rick, as many of these Republicans are out there that aren't getting a hold of this thing with the ferocity that they should. I would also like to say that I'm glad to hear you talk about, call it treason, and I would like for you to go into what the definition of treason is and sedition and how it might apply and the litany of people who it might apply to, like you kind of went through earlier, that you're the first guy I've heard, break down all those names in succession. But I would like to hear that definition of sedition, of treason, and the acceptable punishments for those things. So that's I'm going to hang up and listen.
Well, okay. All right. Yeah, as a matter of fact, a lady called on Friday saying that these acts are seditious, and she's right. Sedition, as largely defined, is conduct or speech. It can be words inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or a monarch. Obviously, we're not a monarch, but that's essentially what it is. I mean, incitement of resistance to, or it's oftentimes called insurrection against whatever the lawful entity or authority might be. And certainly, I think you can make a case for that. Treason, the crime of betraying your country, especially by attempting to kill the sovereign or overthrow the government. I mean, that's generally how it's brought out. The offense of overt acts, not covert acts, but overt acts to overthrow the government of the state to which the person owes allegiance. I mean, it goes as far as, killing or personally injuring the sovereign or the sovereign's family. Treason, you could make a case, short of killing anyone, you could make a case for treason as well. Now, the punishment for treason at a federal level, it depends on when you're talking about it. There was a point in time, and that's generally what people talk about, when treason was a death penalty. Well, whoever owing allegiance to the United States levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort, or elsewhere is guilty of treason, and it's 18 U.S. Code 2381, I think, shall be imprisoned for not less than 5 years and fined. I don't know what to fine. I think it's 10,000 plus or something. But yes, it still carries the death penalty. That's how it's punished. And if you look at it, the Congress shall have the power. If you go to the Constitution, the Congress has the power to punish treason. But corruption of blood, forfeiture, except during the life of the person attained. Treason is the only crime specifically defined in the Constitution, by the way. How's treason punished in the U.S.? Well, if you commit treason against the U.S., again, the way they line it out, it's levying war against them or adhering to their enemies. They have a right to do that. But how do we punish treason? Well, it depends. People say it's a death sentence. It probably was it was at one time. But that's not going to happen. Treason against the United States. Personally, this is what I'd like to see. I'd like to see those guilty of treason or sedition in politics basically be put in prison for a length of time and never allowed to hold any office from a city, county, state, or federal level ever again. Be noted as a person that worked directly against the country. And not so much against the country, but against the people of the country. And that's what this is. Anytime you're trying to rig an election or sway an election, or you're complicit in, setting someone up to fail, which is what they were trying to do, I think that's seditious. I think it's treasonous. And I think it's a component of a coup against a government. And it's not really, when you say government, it's not really so much them, but you as the voter in a democratic republic. Or a representative republic. I don't know. We don't put people to death in this country. I mean, if you go to death row, you're going to be there 10, 15, 20 years. In many cases, longer than your victim was alive. And people say, well, that doesn't stop the crime. You don't know that any more than I know that, putting people to death does stop crime. But I truly believe, if you're working on behalf of ISIS within the U.S. government, that to me is a death penalty, period. If you're working directly against the military as a member of the military, I think the same thing applies. When it comes to Hillary Clinton, she has done nothing in her entire life except for a stint at Rose Law Firm, but be a politician. The worst thing you could do to her is say, that's it. You're no longer to hold any office at a city level, a county level, a state level, or a federal level. That's it. If you or I were to do this, you and I would be in jail. We would be in prison someplace. And I'm not all that sure that some of these people won't go to prison. And I think that's probably as it should be. All right, let me step aside very quickly, check the afternoon drive, and back to your calls in the court of public opinion. Somebody just reminded me I didn't give the punishment for sedition. Sedition is a very tough thing to charge because of the First Amendment. If you go back, the Brandenburg versus Ohio U.S. Supreme Court decision, it said in a nutshell, if you're speaking, giving a speech, or talking seditiously, even if it's speech that causes incitement to violence, is protected by the First Amendment, as long as it does not indicate an imminent threat. And of course, you can camp on that imminent threat all day long. I think for the purposes of talking about this memo, and I mean, it's just Hillary Clinton, man. Everybody that gets in the same zip code with this woman ends up tainted in some way. And, that's fine. I know individuals like that. But they're not running the country, or they're not wanting to run the country. Do you see what I mean? We dodged a bullet this time. You got to turn out and vote. Just have to. Let's go to, let's go to Carmen in Aledo. Carmen, thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, Rick. Thanks again for taking the call.
You bet.
I'd like to ask Shelley if She believes in the protections afforded to U.S. citizens by the Constitution, namely the Fourth Amendment, which requires probable cause when seeking a warrant. And my main takeaway from reading the memo several times was that people within the highest levels of government sought a warrant based on the Steele dossier, which the former FBI director, James Comey, admitted was salacious and unverified, and the former deputy director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, testified before Congress saying that without it, they would not have made that request. So, it's just absurd. And I contacted Congressman Nunes' office to, one, thank him for the effort he's making. And like you, Rick, I think they ought to release the FISA request, and not only that, to release the testimony by Andy McCabe showing that, yes, in fact, without that dossier, there would have been no request for the FISA warrant.
Yeah, the Fourth Amendment, for people that care, it's part of the Bill of Rights. And it prohibits unreasonable search and seizure. Also, warrants have to be judiciously sanctioned and supported. Here's the key: supported by probable cause. And I'm sorry, I don't think a Yahoo News article is probable cause. That's why I want to see the application. I don't know if that's possible, but I want to see it.
Absolutely.
It probable cause now is something you yank off Yahoo or Google. If that's the case, we're all in a lot of trouble.
No, I agree, Rick, and people need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is, and I think notwithstanding what's contained in the memo, the story that it paints. As one caller said it, all the working parts. If you're an American citizen and you care about the country, and more than that, you care about the Constitution, this has got to terrify you. That any political party, Republican or Democrat or any other party down the road, could get this close to rigging an election. Jesse in Fort Worth. Jesse, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Jesse?
Hey, I'm pretty good, man. I get to talk to you a lot, and I show your call screeners. I don't know why people are muddying the water so much, because this all started with the Democratic DNC machine that allowed Obama to be elected 2 terms. And the thing is that John McCain, what is the other name? Utah?
Arizona?
No, Utah. The Utah guy. John McCain is Arizona. But anyway, that machine was so well oiled that they actually promised. They knew Hillary was supposed to be the next president because she conceded to Obama through the National Convention, because she could have contested the National Convention, but they promised her a place in office, and they gave her a place that she was not experienced in with Secretary of State. So now, all of a sudden, it's her time now. And everything that had come out on this memo shows that these people despise Trump so much, being that they were friends with him for 67 years as a Democrat. They turned around and they knew that he was going to snatch this from Hillary. And so they went and colluded with the Russians. And the Russians turned around and turned it back on them, because when they let go the FBI agent, and he wasn't getting paid by the FBI no more, and Russia wasn't paying him no more, all of a sudden he put out this memo. And this memo totally indicated, I'm talking about the Republican side, because the Democrat side ain't going to mean nothing. It ain't going to mean a thing. Because the fact is that we know that the Hillary campaign and the Russians was involved with an attempt to prevent Trump from being president. And back in the hood, we called it a mole. Within our circle, something's going on. People finding out stuff that where did they find it out? How did they know about that?
Well, they probably have Shelley's home number. They just called her to drop the dime, talk to Shelley, and she's got all the documents, evidently. I'd love to see them. Jesse, I appreciate the call. Let me try to get Greg in here. Greg, thank you for waiting.
Thanks, Rick. Man, I love that guy. He's incredible. I'm going to just kind of make it short here. The Democrats are already, deflecting and making up more stuff and going to start causing the usual thing that they do, just deflection and making up stuff. But with this probable cause, part of the Fourth Amendment and everything, it's kind of like when you're in the court as a defendant and your lawyer basically tells the jury, without the smoking gun or whatever, it's just, not very good evidence. Anything is possible. So in that regard, it's going to be tough to prove any kind of treason necessarily. I mean, and Manny's still running around, so that should have been treasonous. But that twit or woman is out doing. I think even considering running for an office somewhere now. Should be in prison. But that's all I got, and thanks again.
Greg, I appreciate the call very much. That's going to do it for me, too. Mark Levin, he's just ahead. God's blessings on each and every one of you, whether we agree or not. And yes, Shelley, that goes for you, too. That's always my priority. I'll be back with you for your afternoon drive tomorrow at 2 to 5. Rick Roberts on News Talk 820 WBAP.
I grew up in one of them old farm towns where they hit it hard till the sun goes down. Nobody really seemed to care that we were living in the middle of nowhere. We just figured that's how it was, and everybody else was just like us, soaking in the rain, baking in the sun. Don't quit till the job gets done. That's the only